Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Water Cooler Chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, broadcasting, transcoding, or anything to do with Livepeer. We're here to ask questions and get answers. Today, we just have a regular Water Cooler Chat, no guests. I believe DOB wanted to do a full-on Q&A session about the Treasury update, but we did it last week, and I figured I'd let that kind of percolate a bit before we get another update. So if he randomly joins in, great. But otherwise, I didn't actually schedule him in for this week, as I figured last week we covered most of it. So yeah, let's go ahead with introductions. Although there's not many of us here, maybe more people will show up. I'm Titan, been running the Titan Node Orchestrator, and yeah, this week my topic is just around last week's topic around the update that Thul wants to make. So just wanted to just shoot around some ideas and around that topic. Yeah, so that's me. Frank, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, I'm Frank. I'm running Ultima Ratio node since 2 years ago, and I'm no special topic tonight.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. John, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah. Hey, this is John with Leet Encoder. I've been operating for about a year and a half. As far as questions, I don't really have any today. I'd be interested to talk more about the governance proposal, though, and ideas around that.
Proposal. Is that the one that Doug? That was the Treasury, right? Is that the
Public
Right.
goods, yeah.
Right,
Public
right.
good funding.
The public goods funding? Yes, of course. That's a good topic for sure.
That's on my topic list. Just the kind of status update. I saw there was some weekly meetings scheduled. I just want to make sure that that was a working group and it was actually to make this stuff happen.
Very good. I love it. Great. Thank you for joining us, John. Papa Bear, would you like to introduce yourself and topic?
Sure. I am Papa Bear. I run the Solar Farm Orchestrator, which I have been running since July of 2021. I don't have a specific topic, but I am interested to chime in and hear more about the two previously proposed topics or suggested topics. So, yeah, that's it.
Very good. Thank you for joining us as always. Mike Zuper, would you like to introduce yourself and topic?
Hey guys, Mike Zuper. I run the Zodap Orchestrator since February of 22. So I'm a kind of a middle of the road, middle age crisis going on with my work right now, but we're maintaining. As far as topics, again, just want to keep tabs on the governance, the public funding stuff that's going on. I don't see the Xeenon guys on, but I was going to ask them if there's any information that they have regarding, cost to transcode for their operation. I mean, they don't have to get into specifics, but I just didn't know if they could validate the theory of 10x cheaper than AWS or XYZ provider. I didn't know if they had any insight into that number, if it's closer to that or beyond that, or I mean, again, knowing that I want to spin up my own broadcasters and get a service off the ground myself, I feel like that's something if they know that would be useful for the group collectively here.
Very good. That's a good topic. And yeah, hopefully they join us at some point. We can definitely ask them that question. So thank you for joining us, Mike, as always. Varies, would you like to introduce yourself and topic?
Hey all, I'm running the Numbers.eth orchestrator since more than 4 years now, and no topic from my side.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. I've come up with a few more topics while we've been in here. So in continuation of Thul's topic around the OBTOB, streaming, I have I saw the benchmarks for the 4070 and the 4080, and it turns out they can do very low transcode sessions. If you guys look under the link for the NVIDIA patch, they list benchmark results, and I don't know why, but this 4070 and 4080 can only do like 11 sessions. So I was curious if anyone did get their hands on one of those yet and was able to benchmark it.
Where did you say this link was?
This is now I have 700 kilobyte a second speed. So by the time I load the page, you might be able to find it faster.
Okay, just where we were talking roughly.
Okay, so if you go to the keyless NVIDIA patch, and
Okay.
you scroll to the bottom, there's a link to all the benchmarked results. Oh wait, no, I was looking at it earlier today. I do have it uploaded already, so I can link it. But yeah, it's got a list of all the cards that get benchmarked for transcoding. Here it is.
I never realized that.
Okay, so that's
Well, okay, I'll stop looking.
lpomsoft.com, and it's in the.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that was still an actively updated site. I used to use it all the time. Interesting. I didn't know.
So it turns out they did benchmark the 40 series cards, and yeah, the 4080, 4070 just didn't do very well. So found that very interesting.
Let's see what's holding those suckers back.
Okay, so that's another topic. Another topic was yeah, I still wanted to get people's update on VOD versus live. And I see the new minimum stake for Livepeer is now roughly 1500 LPT. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and see what
Wow, really? Is it that high? Holy crap.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big milestone to have minimum stake above 1,000, but it's at like 1,300 now or 1,500 now. I have to check. But yeah, it's up there, and it's not that far away from like cruising on up to maybe 2,000 soon here or something like this. So just wanted to have that discussion. There was one person in Discord mentioning that, hey, this is very discouraging for anyone who wants to start up a new orchestrator. So just wanted to, get some feedback and discuss that.
Does it dovetail to the should we have more than 100 question that we ask every so often?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to. So
well, there's the elephant in the room on that one, which is people can just spin up as many O's as they want, and that's what's currently, in my opinion, artificially inflating the supply of orchestrators, because there's at least one node who has like 10 O's.
But won't the 1,500 number as it goes up eventually catch up with that person, or no? You don't think? But 10 times 1,500 LPT, that's got to be a pretty good bill.
Yeah, well, if you open that up to as many orchestrators as you want, that's not an issue anymore.
Oh yeah, if you completely uncap it, yeah.
So yeah, it just comes back to this question of like, what is the purpose of the 100? Is it serving us today? Is it something we wish to keep? I did notice that person was discouraged, and then someone jumped in and said, "Hey, listen, there are some pools you can join. You know, there are some options to contribute in the network without having the capital cost of starting one." And I thought, okay, well, at least we have an alternative, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You know,
yeah, so they can participate, but not maybe wait till they can get their opportunity to join.
Right. And I guess the opposite question is, what is the benefit of not having a cap? We don't need any more orchestrators at this point. We don't have the demand.
Yeah, my first concern is there any degradation if, let's say, we have, it's more wide open, you have more orchestrators, how does that affect the discovery loop, and the efficiency of like locating an orchestrator?
I mean, it's just so unnecessary right now to do that. Like, it's not productive to open it up to as many orchestrators as we want on the network. It just doesn't make sense.
if we put some development into improving that, those like performance metrics, and routing work based off performance, I think that could be an option. But to your point, I agree, we're not to a point where we need it.
Right.
We
I
do
agree
need
with what you
that
just said, John.
aggregated metrics, though. Yeah.
I agree with you. If there's a way to say, yeah, let's have 1,000 works, that's fine, whatever, right? Again, the discovery loop is a big concern, but the other part is, if we have performance and reliability metrics in place, or we have a means of being able to collect that, or there's a different algorithm that could be based on that, then you can spin up 1,000 works if you want. They're not going to get any work, right? If you don't have the infrastructure to support the proper bandwidth and GPUs and all the other stuff that would go into getting your reliability scores good, right? Like the better the scores, that means you're actually running the more ideal environment. So having that as a driver would definitely go a long way.
I feel like this would solve also the problem of people going, I have 0.5 LPT stake and I don't get any work. This isn't fair. And it's like, well, this is already a tough question, and we talk about this a lot. There's distribution of stake, and I don't think opening up more orchestrators fixes any of that problem. So, but yeah, no, I don't really have a hard, fast opinion on this. It was just a topic. It was just something I noticed because, yeah, when I got into the network, we just weren't even at 100 yet. Like, or maybe there was, but it was like 0.001 LPT to get on, and so, for literally 8 LPT, I spun up 8 orchestrators. So now we're at a point where 1,500 to get in the top 100. So to me, it was a significant change and a significant update. So I'm just wondering about like, and that was one of the inspirations for the startup grant was filling up those 100 spots. And yeah, based on a 1,500 cap, I could safely say I think that all 100 spots are taken. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Well, February 2022, I paid 80 LPT to join. So that's when I joined, was 80. So that put a little bit of perspective, even less than a year ago, or maybe a little more than a year and a couple months, from 80 to 1,500. That's explosive.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we started with like 10 or 12 and then ultimately got to about 55 LPT. We really started moving. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, and
It seems like it.
to achieve that in a bear market, I also find that very fascinating. So I'm happy with that side of growth, even happening during a very bearish time. So that's a good outlook. Happy about that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but anyway, yeah, I mean the startup grant is at its last leg. I don't think I'll increase it past 5,000, and once that just doesn't cover the cost to get in, I think that's the end of the grant. So, but yeah, those are my topics. I guess before we move on from that topic, what does anyone else want to comment on that?
I was going to say, I think the price of LPT, which I know is somewhat out of our control, but like the price of LPT probably drives a bit of that number as well. I mean, if it went back to, let's say, $30 a token, we could even see that number go down a little bit. But at this moment, it looks like the network's really starting to grow in terms of ownership, and that's a good thing. I've always thought if there was a way to encourage usage of the LPT token, like for instance, fees are paid in ETH today. Like it would be interesting if LPT could be a part of that fee structure or something.
I think I really would hope that I would love to see streamers earn LPT for streaming on Livepeer, anything that's Livepeer backend, because then as a streamer you get ownership of the network you're streaming on, which I think is a fascinating kind of double positive that could work really well. I know Xeenon brought up that they might do that, but right now they're doing it with ETH to start. And I thought, wow, you should do it. I thought they should start with LPT. That seems more, because it's easier to get LPT than it is ETH, and ETH is a harder asset. So why wouldn't you hand out the LPT first, right?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
But yeah, if we could somehow incentivize streamers to get LPT, I wonder if there's a way of like tracking someone's IP address and then allowing someone to prove their IP address that this stream was coming from, that they could later claim the LPT, like on chain. Does that make sense, or is that just like too easy to fool or something?
I mean, I think at the very least, a broadcaster node could maybe be eligible to earn LPT and then distribute that out to their users somehow. It would be probably the easiest way to get on chain.
Well, ideally, right? I mean, this might also fit into that economic incentive model for orchestrators where you can say, hey, stream with me and I'll give you a portion of my rewards as like a kickback for choosing our orchestrator, right? Where then you can start to do some sharing of your LPT as a way to fund that endeavor. So I don't know. I don't have the right answer, but I think that all those sound like viable ideas.
Wouldn't it be something if broadcaster nodes were able to call reward? It's a wild idea.
Right, and then let them decide how they want to just deal with it. Like Xeenon doesn't need to be an orchestrator to claim reward. Why don't they just act as a broadcaster and call reward and claim their reward, and then maybe there's some I think this was brought up in the past, this idea of staking to broadcasters, but the broadcaster would then be, which is app developers, incentivized to build on Livepeer, and then we would say it would be best if you shared this with your streamers, but you can do whatever you want with your LPT once you acquire it, right?
Yeah, based on the streaming volume that they're putting through, maybe that could somehow, drive the eligibility. Otherwise, because without having a minimum stake or something. But if you have a minimum like streamed, there's a way to validate that. That would go a long way. That'd be a great incentive, I think, for broadcasters to come on and then use the network. Not only are you getting really great rates, but you're also you're able to distribute and earn LPT.
And then we're also expanding ownership of the network to the people who are building on it, right? Which really makes sense.
But isn't it like too easy to game this system if you just like stream to your own orchestrator and collect, like you don't pay anything, you just collect free LPT basically?
So if the broadcaster streams to their own orchestrator and has like a low price per pixel, then they're not paying anything. That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
Or even a high price and they're getting paid themselves, right? So it doesn't really matter.
Right. They're just paying themselves. They're not really helping the whole network out.
That's what Xeenon does.
No, but it doesn't have to be based on the amount of streaming you do, because we already know that can be gamed. Why isn't it just based on stake? Why don't we have a separate staking board for broadcasters, and delegators could stake to broadcasters, and it's the exact same reward cut, fee cut thing.
That's actually pretty good. I don't see a problem with that,
because that doesn't break the security model of inflationary LPT. You can't game that. You have to attract delegators, and delegators choose whether they want to stake to orchestrators or orchestrators or broadcasters.
And why would I stake towards a broadcaster if I can earn ETH if I stake with an orchestrator?
Because Varies, you're a really cool guy and want to see the success of the Livepeer network. I don't know. Maybe a portion of the broadcaster deposit goes to the delegator. Maybe it gets siphoned off before it even hits the orchestrator.
All of these solutions sort of end up with orchestrators making less.
Well,
Seems to be a running theme.
yeah, well, that's because I want more people using the network, building on it. And I feel like all the incentive model goes towards orchestrators and not towards broadcasters.
Right, but that's what the public goods funding is for. And you're doubling that. You're saying public goods funding, okay, now let's also take away more of our income and give that to broadcasters.
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
we have to be able to scale and build as well so that we can, have very good and sustainable infrastructure on our end, right?
Well, that comes
Like,
down to the question of if you build it, they will come. So, like, if we just build something that's top class, world class, reliable, efficient, low cost, is that enough to attract people to come and use our service?
well, we've done that, and the answer is
Oh.
no.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a little bit more to the on-ramp part that I think is where we fall short with Livepeer. And again, you see how easy it is to just hit a button and generate a key for some of these, media platforms out there. And I think when we can get to a point where ingesting video content is super easy and the means to pay for it is real fluid and easy as well, meaning, you don't have to deal with wallets and stakes and reward cuts and fee cuts and all the other stuff. Like when a person can just click on a site, stream, click the link, go to OBS, paste it in and go, right? Or in their browser and say stream now. Like if it's not that easy with a payment model built into it, the demand side is going to always suffer. And I think that's the big problem with a lot of these Web3 projects. But, you know, I feel like building in that area, and I think they talked about that with the public goods and grants, where they're not going to cap those grants for that stuff. Because if you're really got a compelling product, or you feel like you have a good market fit for deriving demand to the market, then they're going to want to fund that, because demand's going to make all the, like, if we had more ETH tickets going out, nobody's going to complain about taking away reward cuts. But when, to Ben's point, is, I'm an orchestrator and I can watch my LPT go from, when I started, it was, I don't know, $18, $20, $30, somewhere around there, and watch it slide below $5 today. And then we're talking about even more cuts to the reward cuts when tickets are still low. Like, I just feel like Ben, I understand, I empathize with what he's saying, but at the same time, demand's the problem. We're just symptoms of that lack of demand.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. For demand, it comes down to ease of use, to how to onboard to the network and use it, getting more broadcasters involved.
Yeah, maybe developers don't need monetary incentives to build. They need ease of use, painkillers, to want to use your product. Right.
Yeah.
Well, developers and
Node.js
customers, I was talking about customers who want to stream, but if you're talking about developers who are going to provide the tools for those people, yeah, they need cohesive building blocks. So like we talk about building for developers, you need to give them a whole bunch of Lego bricks so they can put a model together of their own kind. So if it's IPFS and media network, DCDN and Livepeer, and if it's whatever, Livepeer Studio and Arweave and whatever, all these different integrations, like those are the building blocks that developers need, and they'll be able to come up with compelling use cases where they can generate money. But I feel like on that front, it's also weak right now. Like you got MVPs for NFT creation, you got NFTs for video on demand, and each of these different areas, they're good, they're nice little nuggets to have, but from a developer perspective, it still needs more polish. for it to be considered a Lego brick. If the Lego brick's got a jagged corner on it and no other bricks have a jagged corner, it's going to be hard to put that thing together. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's still a lot of rough edges around these APIs and SDKs that are being built.
Yeah, as a developer, it gives you confidence when you have like a how-to guide on somebody who's done this before, hooking decentralized storage to live video, or just being able to stream straight from a serverless application, those types of use cases.
Right.
Anything
Find
with
the demand use cases and then work back from there.
yeah, like developers want to be able to grab a framework and start coding with documentation, and starting like actual application services on servers, I think is maybe even a bridge too far. Try to make it as easy as possible for them. I'm still very interested in doing like a pure JavaScript broadcaster. I think that would be neat, but a lot of details got to be worked out still.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing about the pure JavaScript broadcaster is that broadcaster going to be ingesting and acting as the media server, or are you trying to just have the package deal with the front end, but you're handing it off to either a media server or transcoder?
Yeah, I think the idea is handing it off to a media server, but it's a good idea. It could be a transcoder. I'm thinking of services that would give you some type of CDN edge that you could cache off of. And
Right. It would be a browser broadcaster that would basically, just think of it like a reporter, somebody on the scene with his phone, and they just hit record now, live, go live, and then they're just sitting there recording, and that stream would be already transcoded in adaptive bit rate. So like you just have to really store it somewhere and then provide a link for playback. And again, maybe it's not real time, but it's near real time. I think that is a use case that, would be nice and sleek. And if you could somehow integrate the transcoder and orchestrator into that workflow, that would be, very easy to get started.
yeah, if the orchestrator could push that to the CDN or wherever it's being kept at, that would be even more efficient. It wouldn't have to come back to this JavaScript broadcaster, if you will.
Well, it goes back to jagged edges of your Lego bricks, right? Like these are all, depending on how you smooth out the broadcaster node or smooth out the edges of the orchestrator, you may be able to find a fit. But I still feel like that's my point, is it's still really early in terms of how to stitch these things together.
Wonder if you could just do it where, you could set up a broadcaster node. Like each orchestrator would run a broadcaster, and it would just be a compressed like like a BONT on one machine. And what you would do is the JavaScript would just geolocate you and then give you the nearest B ingest, and that each transcoder is the media server. And so it doesn't even go through intermediaries. It just goes directly from the person streaming to the person transcoding. And yeah, I don't know, something like that.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a lot of ideas. We could probably talk for hours on potential ideas. So, I mean,
the problem it comes down to is like the whole security model baked into Livepeer was built so that Livepeer token had a purpose, and the purpose was security, and so therefore you have to separate the B's from the O's, and then provide stake, and that staking model is what provides security and trust. But Thul was kind of saying the security and trust model for Livepeer doesn't actually need to exist in the form of stake. He seems to think that it can just be achieved by quickly determining whether you are streaming back the right data, and the moment you aren't, it just switches transcoders. And so, like, why do we even have this notion of stake to begin with? It's because slashing is irrelevant.
Well, I think it's an incentive to be a node operator, an orchestrator, right? Like you're going to pay the expense of running an orc, and you want to make it attractive so that folks can choose your orchestrator, and that way you can get more work when the stake goes up, and then you can, you know what I mean? So like it is a way of like allowing transcoders to get paid ETH and orchestrators to manage partial ETH and, you know, LPT as a way to manage operations. And as we see today, you know, the price of LPTs made that very difficult for orchestrators. But you know, on a positive note, and specific to that point, Titan, I just wanted to mention that you know the video miner team is actually working on a software release called Plutus, and it actually targets that particular area where, like we were talking about, you know, the $1,500 barrier to entry, right? Trying to for orcs people to get into the network and participate, and the person rightly pointed them to a public pool. But a public pool like Live Pool or even Video Miner, there's not enough stake there for that pool to be effective, right? Like it's not going to get enough work for those transcoders. So they'll get their little dust from, you know, each of these little pools, but it's still not good. So the reason is from Video Miner, in that what we're doing is we're going to allow our pool management system to allow transcoders and orchestrators to connect together. So today, Video Miner is an orchestrator, and it has a pool of transcoders. But what we want to do is we want to open up our pool of transcoders to every orchestrator, so that every orchestrator doesn't even have to run a transcoder at all. That they can use our pool of transcoders, and their stake-based work could basically be a way to get our transcoder pool more work. You know what I mean? So like, and that's what our really the focus is for our upcoming release. I just wanted to throw it out there because to me it has a benefit for all orchestrators here, especially single node operators. Like, you know, Elite's got his node in his house and he wants to expand to a different region, right? You just throw up an O, you connect the video miner T pool to your O, and now you have access to our pool of T's and you can use them. I mean, again, the biggest cost for an orchestrator is running those GPUs, right? And if you don't have to do that, it makes it a lot more compelling for you to be a higher stake. You know, you could focus more on your orc operations and less on your GPUs. But just throwing that out there. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or, you know, they want to throw some feedback there.
No, that's a really exciting concept.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, we're super excited about this, and like huge shout out to Zoop specifically and FDK and Marco for like putting their heads together and come up with this. It seems so simple, but none of us thought of it. And I think the 8 of us on the team will be the first to like try and put all the orchestrators together and see how that works out. You know, implementation is still work in progress, and we can't share too much there right now because we're still working on a lot of stuff. But the idea of just being able to pool all our stake together and still run our own O's, but all have it under the umbrella of Video Miner and using public transcoders and our own transcoders if we want to, is just it allows for a lot of scalability. Where right now it's kind of difficult to scale your node operation, and you can imagine if the network did scale massively, and you know there was a
We'd
ton
all
of
be
work.
scrambling.
We'll be scrambling trying to put up like 50 more O's and like rent GPUs, and then if they change the way the ingest network works, and we're like trying to figure out GOD, you know, it'll just be a headache. So this aims to alleviate that in a pretty big way, and we're excited to see how it goes.
Well, on the public Livepeer front, right? Like, you know, we always hear this, right? I got 100 GPUs. How much money can I make? You know, well, again, if you look at individual orgs, the demand is going to be low for those people, right? So you're not going to get it on a public pool. But being able to take the combined orchestrator GPU fleet that we have out there now, everyone's paying for GPUs in their respective places, right? So like that's a cost that everyone has to bear, and the hardware is idle, right? Unless you're tapping out your GPU. I don't know about you guys, but my GPU sit idle all day long. You know what I mean? I get some bursts here and there, but I don't get enough work to really sustain the cost of that. So this is really a driver for me to say, for one, how can I reduce my cost? But two, How do I allow the public GPU fleet and these people that are coming from mining where they have tons of GPUs? How do we get them on the network and start allowing every orchestrator to tap into that cost savings?
Yeah, and it really pushes us to focus on performance a lot more as well, because if we're putting our own O's in this pool, we want to make sure the transcoders can handle their
Perform.
work and perform well,
That's right.
because it's going to be extremely vital for our own orchestrator operation as well.
They call that eating your own dog food.
Exactly.
Yeah, from my experience with trying to onboard other transcoders, it does become a bit of a mentoring experience. If there's just any way to work directly with them, it's a learning thing on both sides. You learn how to teach, and you teach
Yeah, I
what you
think
Well, the
learn.
thing about Video Miner though is that we have if you haven't installed the Video Miner software, go check it out. But I mean, literally, it is like super easy. There's really very little that the GPU miner has to do to get onboarded. Like patching and everything is automated. Like, it really makes it easy to onboard them, right? And with the dashboard and the metrics and the payout system we have, they'll be able to see their earnings, and with additional streams coming in from all the other orchestrators leveraging, now we got a whole bunch more GPUs and people that are going to be happy because they're going to see their payouts coming more frequently. And orchestrators, we have the capability to do performance metrics and ranking. So like every T that's in our system is ranked based on their performance in every region. So if their performance degrades, they're not going to get the streams coming, right? So we have a lot of things that are going to safeguard the system and also improve reliability and performance for all the orchestrators. So I think this is a huge win. But again, I just wanted to tease it out there a little, let you guys know. And if you guys have feedback, obviously we always want to hear it.
Yeah, and just to John's point, I think you make an awesome point there. Like, when the transcoders start seeing the ETH actually come in the way it should be, they're going to get excited and motivated, and it gives us an opportunity to teach people, what it means to actually transcode and, what matters. Like, we have some guys in our pool who are mining at the same time, and they're confused why they keep getting memory errors and whatnot. And honestly, they don't care that they're running a transcoder, because they maybe make like $1 a month doing what they're doing now. But if they're making a bit more and the work is consistent, they'll open their minds and they'll be willing to be educated and to be taught, and maybe they'll want to run orchestrators. It could just be really good for the network as a whole.
Yeah, it gives us another opportunity as orchestrators to develop monitoring and tooling around that performance measurement too, and see what those challenges are out there. So we're just taking more of a central role working with transcoders. It's always a good thing. I think having like a pipeline of getting transcoders to orcs is a win as well.
Well, again, on that point, John, is, we're going to be collecting metrics from transcoders. We have orchestrators, and we're spinning up broadcasters as well. So we'll be doing some live streaming as part of this whole, video miner platform. But, the bottom line is demand's going to come, but we'll have the metrics and capabilities to like instrument and monitor all the different node operators that are running. And again, we talked about this in past water coolers about like streamer network and being able to, create a Web3 integration where you can opt into these streamer networks and publish your performance metrics and your reliability data so that broadcasters can use that tool as a way to say, hey, I'm going to choose this org. He's always up. He's always got the highest, or the lowest transcoding scores, etc. Like the quality metrics that matter for that person would then be enabled, especially knowing that you could have visibility into all different layers of the stack. Well, those are some wild tangents. I don't know, but just threw it out there. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add, Titan.
No, it's interesting. No, this is the development of the network and the supply side. So, my goal is, as a token holder of the network, I want to see a successful network, right? This is why, like if I cared about getting more work for myself and not giving it to others and trying to earn ETH, I probably wouldn't have put together tutorials and done these water coolers and right? But the idea that I have ownership in the network makes me really bullish and really happy to hear these kinds of ideas come out. So, yeah, power to the network in general.
It's a travesty, in my opinion, to see so many GPUs on the network. I mean, to me, I just feel like it's a travesty for all these GPUs to be on the network and to be idling. You know, like I know a lot of folks got a lot of hardware out here, and why not spread it around so that everyone can derive the work to where the GPUs are? You know what I mean? If you got idle GPU, you want to get paid, you should be able to do that. I think that was the promise of the network, right? But we don't want a idle fleet of hardware.
Yeah, I think that's just sheer demand. We need more demand. Before we, I just want to quickly also jump into some more introductions. I see some other people have joined us. So, Troy, would you like to introduce yourself and any topics you might have?
Hey guys. I don't actually have anything to talk about this week. I just was listening in. I do find it interesting, some of the stuff you guys are talking about. So, like we've got one of our DevOps working on kind of like auto GPU scaling. So, you know, like we obviously want to have like remote, not like server based like hardware, in the sense that it's like sitting in AWS. But at the same time, you know, as we drive more demand at Xeenon, we obviously need like a backup. And so we did develop like this like auto GPU scaling system.
Right, and then you built that at a cost with the hope that the demand will come. And what the promise of this T pool would be is basically to say, I don't care what size your business is as you're scaling, you could always leverage this and your own hardware. So like if you knew you had an upcoming promotion, a big spike, but you didn't want to foot the bill with AWS because you're already kind of at your spending limit for that month, there's no reason why you couldn't just point to that pool, right? Subscribe to the pool, get in, and then when you have your spike in demand, let that overflow go to the pool. And all you're going to be doing, instead of paying an AWS bill, you're going to send ETH to transcoders. It's what you really want to be doing anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were kind of hoping that there was something like that, right? And then it's like, we obviously get into these situations where we start thinking about like, because we'll do promotions and things. And then it's like, okay, well, we need to make sure that like there is fallover, like there's spillover.
That's right.
And it's been kind of like an issue. Like luckily, I mean, this isn't like a good thing, but we haven't had that problem 100%. But there has been times like when we try to break it when we're doing like load testing, and we're like, well, okay, well this isn't gonna work if we make a deal with someone to come in and start streaming on the platform or something like that.
That's like, right.
If we can break it on a load test,
it's gonna get broken in the wild. That's for sure.
It's gonna get broken in the wild 100%. Yeah.
You know, the other thing too is like, think of it this way: is like you're building stuff, right? And with the hopes that it's going to go viral. The one day it takes off like a rocket ship and it crashes down, and there's no GPU kind of scenario, right? Like the day it goes viral is when it's too late at that point. So, but it sounds like you guys have some contingencies, and it sounds also like this might be something appealing to you as well. So again, we can always talk offline.
Well, actually,
set up a.
Yeah, like, well, okay, yeah, we could talk offline, but yeah, it would definitely be appealing to us, for sure.
Cool, awesome. I mean, again, I'm a GPU operator, so I know that things are expensive, and if I could find a way to reduce or eliminate that cost, then we're talking good stuff.
I'm curious, Troy, how are you scaling today? I've thought for a while, because when you run a Livepeer broadcaster, one of the messages says like no co-located transcoders available. Like, is there a way? And this is more of a general question if anyone knows the answer, but is there a way to run your own transcoder process with a broadcaster, put a session limit on that, and then fail over, or, you know, take the overflow and send it to the Livepeer network as a whole? I just think that would be a pretty common use case where you run your own hardware, you know, and default to that first, and then secondarily send streams out to other orchestrators.
So we
well,
can't
that's part
default.
of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can't actually default to ourselves first, but we can limit. Like we can say, okay, like these are the orcs that we want to use, and then it like spills over when those orcs get to, like when it doesn't.
Right.
When there's not, yeah, but it's not exactly like it's hard to it's kind of hard to kind of come up with all the different edge cases of how you think things would work or how you hope they work and stuff, and like definitely building on it has been a learning experience, I think, for everyone involved. But like what you guys are talking about with that T pool, I think it was called, like that's really interesting because like we would definitely probably use something like that.
I mean, in my mind, I'd envision every single orchestrator would want to use it, because if you're running a single node at home, right, but you want to get streams in Chicago, you want to get streams in such areas, it's pretty cost effective to spin up an orchestrator, right? You can get a VPS for $20 a month, $10 a month somewhere, spin that bad boy up, but you don't have the GPU in that region, and that's where you really get hurt. And again, I don't care if you're big or small, right? Like if you're in the game, right, the regions matter. Every little stream chance you can get is going to make a difference for you. And today, if you don't get the streams, you're just pouring that GPU rental down the drain, right? Like my idle CPU or my idle GPU, I'm throwing money away every month. I'd rather pay that to the transcoder pool, and when I need them, I can use them, right? And when I don't need them, I'm not paying for them, right? So to me, I like that hot and ready, baby. Like pizza, hot and ready. Let's go.
Yeah, totally.
It's awesome. Well,
It's also just like it seems like it would really help out, like because like if you look at like Leinster and things like that, right? Like they're just feeding it in, but like sometimes like I get the feeling that the like there's like, I'm not using the right word here, but latency issues there at times. Like what we need is like the demand, right, for the network. And the more we can like provide like a higher quality service, I mean, some of that falls kind of on Lens because they don't allow anyone to just have a Lens handle. But yeah, I think also like if you want to onboard like bigger players, you're gonna like 100% need that, because like if they're doing their homework on it, like we just kind of went in dirty, but if they're doing their homework on it, they're gonna realize that like they're like, okay, well we can't like 100% use this just yet.
Well, there was a guy that came into the broadcaster channel, a few months back. He was part of the Switzerland like public broadcast system or whatever. They basically did all the video streaming for like so that he came in and he was like, oh, I got he's working on his broadcaster. He got it all set up, and he was trying to find a way to make a compelling business case to his board of directors. And with all the jargon and all the technology and all the hoopla and all the jagged edges of all the integrations, he found it hard to justify that just because of the jagged edges. But in his prototype, he found that the cost savings were large. It's just the technical challenges and difficulties to get the network to enterprise scale, enterprise readiness wasn't there yet. There's a lot of things that still need to be worked out, and I think you're going through them. You're experiencing them, and you'll continue to learn and smooth them out as you go. But that's the difference between successful projects with durability and those that are just here trying to get rich quick.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting that someone like that came in and was doing that work.
Yeah, I was all over him. His name was Jarvis, and I spent a lot of time trying to help him building stacks, trying to, I really, really felt like this was a golden goose coming through, right? Like something that would be good for everybody. And I just, he kind of disappeared for a while and haven't heard from him. But, now that I'm speaking of him, I might just ping him again. But it was definitely refreshing to have somebody on the demand side talking about how to get at an enterprise scale.
Yeah, his constituents basically asked me to make the video unpublished on YouTube because of the representation of the large corporation. and how it wasn't their public media person who did the Q&A. So it's actually an unlisted video now. So if anyone wants
Either
to
way,
watch it, I can
mean,
send
you
you the
could.
link. But nonetheless,
Right. Yeah. It was good. It was good to really just hear that conversation, just to hear the speech and the challenges. And I'm sure you guys at Xeenon will probably echo a lot of what he was saying.
I mean, we've definitely worked it, right? And we spent a lot of time on it, but having kind of like a go-to solution like that is going to be like it's just a big win for the protocol, in my opinion. And like,
I agree.
like I'm cool with that. I mean, we run an orchestrator too. It's like, let's get it done.
Yeah, man, I'm with you on that.
Wonderbar. We do have someone else here I want to do an introduction of, or at least keep going through these. Theproducer.lens. Would you like to introduce yourself and any topics or questions you have? The producer, I can't hear you if you are I don't know if you're muted or...
I have push to talk on.
Oh,
Sorry.
there you go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, my name's Sam. I've been working with you guys kind of on integrating a decentralized storage solution, specifically Swarm, connecting that to Livepeer. But moreover, we're trying to make decentralized storage more usable. So the first thing we're starting with is an S3 compatible API connection to Swarm, as well as probably going to be deploying a lot of infrastructure around Swarm to make it more robust to support, even demand from Livepeer or any other more demanding applications than they currently have. And then we're also trying to remove barriers like, you need a Web3 wallet to be able to use this decentralized storage. So we're trying to make it as easy as like a couple clicks and you'll be able to migrate from traditional S3 or make a backup for your traditional S3 type storage and use a credit card if you're not Web3 native, or if you are Web3 native, you don't have to buy a special token. We'll take in USDC on Ethereum network and take care of the rest in the background. So trying to make that more accessible. As well as I am very interested in Livepeer specifically because I come from a background of both tech and media. So I used to work for Viacom / Paramount. Now it's called Paramount all around, but worked for them for 5 years in a kind of middle management role there. So, and I still live in Hollywood, so a lot of interest, and maybe we could talk more about the demand side. I would love to see if there's any kind of things we could put together there from existing relationships here in Hollywood. But
oh, dude, you're singing my song. Don't get me happy over here. You're singing that good stuff. I love it.
No promises. No promises. But,
no, the hopium's good enough.
All right.
The producer, thank you so much for joining us. I don't know, have you been to a water cooler chat? I don't recognize.
Yeah, probably just work. So I've been to a couple.
Very cool. Well, it's great to have you up on stage and welcome. It's great to see you. Yeah, well, that was an awesome introduction. It's really cool you have experience with Viacom and that kind of experience. You said are you working with the Swarm community? Like, are you a dev over there, or what's your involvement with Swarm specifically? Maybe I missed that.
No, I'm not on their team specifically. We've got just a project that involves their decentralized network. Specifically, we just started building an adapter / interface for Swarm, but we're going to branch out and into different areas as well. So independent.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for joining, Sam. I've been working with Sam a little bit on that Swarm integration as well. And last week, I made some changes to the ability to save VOD segments to S3. I think so far we've been able to actually play back video directly from S3. We don't have any examples of like a longer video. There's probably a few things to work out, but at the high level, it seems to be working. So the idea there is you can record as an orchestrator, or as a broadcaster, you can record directly to S3 storage and then play it right back off the Edge CDN. That's what we're aiming to do at the moment.
When's that slated to go into the code base? Is that up for merging?
You know, I think we're still working on how we're really going to deliver this. You know, what form it's going to take, but I think that's a useful feature because I know when I started working with Livepeer in like maybe 2019 as trying to set up as a broadcaster, that's what held me back was the ability to play back videos that I was recording. And I got them to record to S3 storage, but there was not like an M3U8 file there. And there does appear to be an interface to play back the stream through a broadcaster. The broadcaster is kind of statically hooked up to the S3, and not really clear to me yet on how it finds which recording. So we just decided it'd be easier, you know, just record it. It's already storing the segments on the S3. If you have an Edge CDN hooked to that, you could just play the playlist right off the recording. And it seems to work pretty well. So maybe there's a way we can just add a flag, turn that off and on as a broadcaster.
Well, that was a missing piece for me. Like I was saying to you, where I have the my media Edge network set up against my broadcasters to stream to Edge from there. But I thought there was an IPFS store for Livepeer, but I couldn't figure out how any of that worked. So, but if you have an S3 interface going in, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's already support S3, but at this point, I think what Sam and I have been able to do is get it where it will write out to Swarm through the S3 interface. And Swarm, correct me if I'm wrong, it can serve as a CDN, but it's also a decentralized storage by nature. So that you're basically talking to a Swarm node, I think, when it comes to the S3.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I tend to take the Web 2 port first and then go Web 3. So like if you have a S3 interface and an object store, like a MinIO or something like that would be perfect to do locally and test locally, even run in production. But this gives you that Web 3 capability that adds on to it. That's even better.
Yeah, by using S3, you could do Web 2, you could do your own server, or if you wanted to be broader, bigger system.
Yeah. Nah, that's great. Smart. It's a widely used interface. Why not bridge the protocols using it?
Anything to add there, Swarm? Sorry, Dan.
Just one last. The producer. I tried to follow you on Lens, but it says your follow module won't let me. Just FYI.
Oh, okay. We'll look into that. And yeah, just one more thing. Yeah, we're trying to make that obviously the S3 API is like the most widely used connector that there is, and I think the market for it is like I don't know, like there's $15 billion in object storage market out there. So like we're trying to create that first for Swarm and for other decentralized storage networks. It just makes sense, right? Like if you're already on AWS or all the other clones that use that connector, if you can just simply have a 3 fields that you have to change or add in addition to make like a backup on Swarm or Arweave or you name it. That's just like something I think will be like a very compelling case for Web 2 users to move over to Web 3 when they see storage savings costs for ingress, egress, as well as like the redundancy and all the benefits there. It's just like when people hear crypto, especially in the corporate world, it's just automatic turn off. So I think this is kind of like a Trojan horse in maybe.
Well, no, what you're saying is for the next generation of companies, there's going to be as I were calling them, just as we were talking earlier, a series of Lego bricks that people build to make this easier for enterprise readiness. And by doing it this way, you're going to basically say, hey, we're going to support your Web 2 interface so that you don't have to go change your whole business to go to this world. And oh, by the way, don't worry. It's managed, it's a service, it's good, everything's great, you're going to save money. Corporate's going to say yes, and guess what? You're going to tell them after they're hooked, oh, by the way, it's crypto. What? Oh my God. But like the corporate savings are there, like the security, all the things that matter to enterprises will be there. So it's not going to matter. No one's going to care where it's stored once it's proven to be effective, cost effective, and the solution is secure. All the things that you would expect from any Web 2 provider. If that's the interface and it works and it's secure and all those things match, they don't care if it's underlying blockchain technology as long as they're getting those savings passed on to them.
Yeah, I agree. If you can get to the point where you've integrated it and you've created that MVP to show upper management, but pitching it first without having it built out and all the demonstration capability there, as well as all the math worked out, it's not going to fly. And I know that from personal experience, just trying to move away from like buying specifically like Dell servers or like using these AWS or something, and trying to move to a different provider that provided the exact same services for half the cost. It didn't fly just because the risk there that is perceived.
Yeah. Well, that's going to change with time. And again, I think the case studies are the perfect way. There's going to be some daring folks out there to take the risk. They're going to benefit from it. And then once the word gets out, others will start adopting the same savings, and then it becomes normal. But look, cloud is in that boat. I work for corporate IT, healthcare, and this stuff is in the same boat, right? Like going to the cloud is new. You know what I mean? If AWS is new and the risk assessments are going on in that, Web3's like a child at this point. It's not a reality. When that starts to become more mature and hardened use cases that match real production business transactions are going through these systems, it'll change. And I think in the financial markets and DeFi, you'll see a lot of that already starting to change. But media, Hollywood, healthcare, good Lord, forget that. It'll be like, 30 years before even someone says, is crypto ready for healthcare?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, completely agree. And I did work in pharmaceuticals, well, like pharmaceutical manufacturing. And that was any type of change there was like, you have to go through 15 audits to make any kind of change. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. With the cloud thing, like all of a sudden, it was taboo. And then within the span of like 2 years, Paramount, everything was going to the cloud, whether it needed to go to the cloud or not. And
That's right.
I'm not like, I was on the side where I was like, wait, this is very sensitive information. Do we really want to put this up on Amazon? Kind of just a little bit hesitant for some things, but it was just like, oh no, we're going all in, everything on the cloud, nothing, in our database or data centers that we had, on premise. So
at the end of the day, if your data center gets hacked, it's going to be a lawsuit, right? If their data center gets hacked, it's your lawsuit against them, right? Like it's all about pushing the liability off. And I think, if Amazon guarantees these things that you can't do as good as they can, it's going to be an easy choice, right? And I think that's what Web3 and crypto is up against, right? Like when we talk about streaming and these things and all that, like the end of the day, it's great for hobbyists at this point, but when you really take it above that, when you run businesses on it, until these jagged edges get worked out, there's going to be some slow adoption. And I think performance, reliability, security, scalability, all the ilities that you can think of are going to come to play. And having use cases and working systems that demonstrate it and it's easy to use becomes paramount.
Yeah, that's true. It's like upper management's going to be like, "Oh, that's cool. What's the SLA that we have with these guys?" Like,
yeah, nope, that's right, man.
Yeah, on the S3 point, I was looking at Store.j as a competitor decentralized offering, and they have sort of like a corporate structure, but they're a decentralized network, and they use S3 like off the bat just to get you all set up for storage. So
you heard of the most widely used interface. Why not support it? If you don't, no one's moving.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been supported on the Livepeer side for years, but it's actually found the PR for it. It had work in progress on it. Like it never, was fully finished. You could see missing M3U8s. I think there was a proprietary way for playing back videos from object storage.
I see.
That really wasn't fitting. There wasn't any documentation around it, and probably need to do some more reading into exactly what they intended to build there. But it seemed more obvious to just be able to play it right back off of an edge cache. So that's what we're moving towards.
Your middle name is going to be Livepeer. You know that. You keep doing the work you're doing, man. You're going to turn green. You're going to be like the Incredible Hulk soon.
Seriously, John, you're going nuts, man. Love
I
it.
do more
I
do more talking than I do building sometimes, but it's some good stuff.
Hey, man, you're talking and building. You're in it, dude. That's good.
You and Brad both. Hats off.
Yeah, why is
you
Brad
guys make me jealous?
Why is Brad and Fort Coonsman in the audience? How dare they? They need to be up here. Sirs, right-click your names and head up onto stage, please. We need introductions and topics.
Yeah, Troy jetted, man. Before I had a chance to talk to him, I wanted to ask him about the broadcaster stuff, but we got into so many other topics. I didn't get a chance to, but I get him next call.
Definitely. Well, yeah, it was interesting. I'm glad Troy popped in for a little bit. It was great to have him. And yeah, well, I liked that he liked your idea so much. It was really reassuring that that was something that he was actually could see a lot of value in.
Well, that's why I wondered if all the other orcs, I hope that some of the other orcs get to play this back and listen to it, because to me, we all struggle when managing our costs and being at global presence, right? So, and everyone's making their trade-offs, and this just makes that trade-off a lot more easier. And for those that are on the edge of going, in the red or are, slightly losing, they can turn the tide on that. Maybe turn a slightly negative orchestrator into a positive, right? You can turn it into the black, start making some profit off of it. So I feel like there's a lot of value for everybody here.
Very much so. All right, cool. Well, either way, the producer, thank you so much. Was it Sam? I forgot. I think I got your name. Maybe not. But either way, thank you for joining us, as always. And like I said, I tried to follow you on Lens, but I believe you have to set your... I don't know how. I don't know if anyone else has done this. I think, Frank, you had this problem. You have to have your follow module set. So, not sure how to do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I just acquired it, so I haven't really messed with it too much, since they have such a weird distribution scheme on who gets lens handles. So I haven't really played with it too much, but yeah, I'll check that out. Try and fix it.
Yeah, because then you can get more followers. So bada boom. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Where else can we go? Let's get into governance and the Treasury and governance proposals of the conversation with Doug. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm on vacation, so I have not been as active as I normally am. Is there any updates with the governance proposal? Any discussion in the forum, or anyone that wants to bring up some new things since the last week's conversation?
Yeah, sure. So Doug asked if anyone would like to build up a model showing how this would work over time. And I was thinking ChatGPT is actually incredible at building predictive models, and it can format them in tables. I'm not very good with the prompts, but if someone wanted to get with me after this call or at some point this week and try and get ChatGPT to build a predictive model of how this would look with like the percent that orchestrators give, the inflation rate, um, and some other details, and just see over the course of say 2 years, how would that treasury grow and what it would look like. I think that would be really useful.
So he's looking for a model for the Treasury reserve.
Growth, yeah, to show the treasury growth over time.
Yeah, I think ChatGPT would be a great tool for that.
Yeah,
However,
definitely.
I see that there's a lot of new plugins and ChatGPT 4 is out, and apparently it's gotten so much better. I feel like I'm missing the boat a bit because I haven't really been using it as much as I could.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you don't need like the newest, flashiest thing. Just in general, the way ChatGPT has been built, it just does really well with predictive models. So I figured it was a good opportunity to use it.
well, there you go. Maybe do we want to figure out what information do you need in order to get a model? Do you want to
Um,
write?
yeah, so Doug listed a couple of points, and maybe someone here knows what else we can add to them. He put treasury contribution percent, the budget for what would be spent from the treasury by month or quarter, the Livepeer network inflation rate, and then he put etc. So I don't know off the top of your guys' head if there's anything else that would needed to be added to that model to make it more accurate,
Yeah,
or is that enough information?
so it's essentially just how much should the Treasury receive, and what is our budget? What is our estimated budget for spending?
Yeah, and like what do we think the outflow would be, right? And does that work with how much we're actually funding the treasury with, and what the percent is that we choose?
What are we doing this based on a percentage model where we do, 1% of all inflation goes to this treasury, or are we doing a fixed amount model, or is that for us to decide?
I think it's for us to decide, but from where Doug is coming from, he's going by percent right now. So we, I guess, as a community, would choose a percent that works for everyone, and that would be what goes into the treasury.
Would it worth? Yeah, so we need to come up with a percent and then build some models around that.
Yeah.
And
So like say
and
5%.
multiple models, maybe like, come up with 5 different models around what could happen and what budgets are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would start with like one model, which might be a good example just to start with, is just like 1%. Like maybe the Treasury is the unofficial 101st orchestrator, right? And it just gets 1%, and model that out and just see like, okay, at 20% inflation, assuming the same inflation, how would that look over the next 2 years? How much would the Treasury earn? And then based on the compounding does the Treasury earn LPT rewards from its own stake? Is it going to delegate to anyone?
As I mean, I'm assuming the treasury is not a node. I don't
So
know.
it
I would
doesn't have
I would assume that
delegation capabilities.
I would hope that it wouldn't be an orchestrator, because that's just going to be kind of nuts.
No. I'm not saying orchestrator. I'm saying delegator. Can it,
I wouldn't think so.
if it accumulates 50,000 LPT, does it have the right to delegate that LPT for more reward?
Well, that's where the tiered system comes in for deciding where that LPT goes, right? So that
Yes.
would be up to us to say, hey, we want all this LPT to be staked to people, right?
Or do we want to opt out and say that this is a treasury meant for spending, therefore it shouldn't have, because the point of delegation is you're choosing, you're a network participant, you get you have voting rights, you have ETH income rights, you have all these different things, but does a treasury get those same things generally?
Well, that yeah, my impression was that that is not what the LPT is for in the Treasury. It's not for staking, but it's up to the community and however we do the voting system to decide where that LPT goes and whether or not it has a right to be staked to nodes. I thought the LPT was there to fund ideas, and that's it.
Well, I think that it is there to fund projects, but I think if it's not spent, I don't see why we wouldn't want it to be staked to somewhere to at least be earning more LPT while it's rather than just sit there. I mean, just like kind of put it in the bank.
Right, but that brings in a lot of complications of if they're staking to multiple nodes and if they're a multi-sig and they're trying to set up multiple accounts and then they have to wait 7 days to move the LPT to a project. It brings in a lot of complications in my mind. But I mean I don't know. Maybe that's a good idea. I don't know.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, I believe that because it's kind of like a tax, like a government tax service, almost like a 1% tax. Like it shouldn't have delegation rights. It shouldn't be delegating. It should just be accumulating because it already gets the accumulation, and it should just be idle. It shouldn't have voting rights or delegating rights.
I agree, and I would even go as far to say as it shouldn't even be LPT. It should be transferred to either a stable or ETH or just something else, so that it's just not that token. But yeah, I don't know. I guess to your point, if it was staked, then that would play into the model and it would change it quite a bit.
I would say that we should have it as LPT.
Okay.
Because I believe giving people the tokens that give them ownership is probably more beneficial to the network than just giving them straight cash. Even though they have the ability to just sell it on the spot, just giving them LPT is more aligned with working on LPT. Maybe, I don't know. And it puts less regular sell pressure on the network for.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's a way to make it into the smart contract somehow where it's this entity. It's not really a delegator or an orchestrator, but it said it's taxing the inflation rate.
Yeah, I always thought it was just like a vault that holds it, and that was it. It didn't play into the network at all, but
yeah,
I didn't think about it like how Titan described it.
Well, no, this is what I'm confirming. I agree with that. I agree that it's just a vault. So, but how does this vault work? If it's a multi-sig smart contract, then naturally it won't have the ability to delegate. Should we somehow strip the treasury of the ability to delegate, or should we allow the DAO to just make that decision that they won't delegate the tokens?
Yeah, I don't know. What if a project or a tier 2 DAO in this voting system says, okay, hey, we want 30k LPT to support this project, but we want it in the form of stake. Do they have the right to request that? And can the entities vote on that and decide, okay, yeah, sure, they can have this 30k as stake to their node so they can build this project?
Seems like both a good and bad idea.
Right.
I think you would have to give this stake to a different ETH account where that person was awarded it. Like, I mean, how complicated do you want to make the treasury? I feel like
I mean, here's the thing: if they, if a project requests 30K and they get 30K, I mean, they can just stake it to their own node when they get it. It doesn't have to be the treasury that stakes. I mean, either way, it can be staked once the project that gets it, gets the LPT.
In the same spirit, we have grants going on today that could be administered through such a framework in the future.
I mean, I would say that if the Treasury should just be handing out tokens. I feel like if you start to get into like them holding keys to stake, like maybe it's just best to pick a lesser amount and give them the tokens, because then you have a very clear cut kind of like agreement on what's happening and a distribution of the tokens. And then
Yeah, I think it just simplify it. I'd agree.
Because I can tell you, like well, the startup grant, I have like 4 sponsors in the grant, and like, it's just more. It's more work doing it this way, right? It just is, and I think a treasury would just be best suited to just have a regular source of income from inflation, and then a budget to hand it out, and whatever it hands it out to is completely based on whatever the formula that is required in order to get that right.
Right.
Keep it.
So how would we?
Keep it simple? Because it's the
How
tier
would-
2. It's the tier 2 people that get to decide how they want to manage those tokens, right? The tier 1 treasury simply hands out the tokens. The tier 2 DAO or whatever is the one that like comes up with fancy incentive models on like the startup grant. It's literally a tier 2. It receives 5,000 LPT from the treasury on the tier 1 treasury, and it manages temporary stake and like all these like nuanced rules that someone can make tier 2 projects on, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So the tier 1 treasury is simply like 1%. We vote on an LIP that 1% of inflation all goes to this treasury, which is a multisig, and based on something like what is that that one program, it's called, there's a really good one for it. I'm sure there's lots, but Catalyst, ideascale.com. They do.
I'm familiar with them.
What's that?
I'm familiar with that company.
Yeah, so we could put together quarterly or monthly funding rounds through IdeaScale, and as a layer 1, as a tier 1 treasury, and let the IdeaScale process handle the submission, proposals, review periods. We can use that platform. I know other crypto projects use it quite successfully, and then they do on-chain voting that's tied into IdeaScale, and then it works quite well. So something like that. So like the treasury, 1% matched with IdeaScale, and you're going. But like you said, Ben, we should definitely put together some ChatGPT models for different percentages. That would be a really great idea.
Yeah, when you find out what that percentage would generate, then we can maybe dial in on an idea of how much we need.
Yeah, and I'll try and touch base with some of the guys after and figure out how to structure the prompt. I guess for the inflation rate, you need to know how many tokens are in circulation and what the participation rate on the network is, right? I'm not a numbers guy, so this stuff goes over my head.
You don't need to know how many are in circulation. It's just it's dependent on the amount that is staked. Oh wait, no, the amount in circulation. Does that matter?
That's what I don't know.
Well, either way, you can kind of calculate the current inflation rate. 1%. Well, what?
It tells you how many are eligible to be minted each round.
So
you could take the inflation rate, do some math with that.
The amount that is, it's interesting because it's going to be hard to build a model, because if a whale unstakes, that drastically changes the amount of inflation there is immediately, right? So
We'd have to build some fluctuation into the model and just sort of assume that things will bounce around somehow.
yeah,
I mean, it won't
think
be
you
exact, but
probably should use a 50% in participation rate, because that's what it's targeted to be. I mean, obviously it goes above and below that, but the purpose of I know that the original intent was to target a 50% participation rate.
I mean, if we can
the-
program in like a 4% fluctuation throughout the year, that's pretty much where we sort of sit, right? We're either up, if things are well, we kind of bounce around above the 50%. I think the highest we went was like 52, 54, I don't know, something like that.
It's
And
like,
then the
yeah,
lowest we've gone is
53.4. It looks like, yeah.
yeah, and then we've been pretty low as well, but you know, if we can just factor in a little bit of fluctuation, that should give us a good idea. I think 50% on the mark is kind of going to be a bit inaccurate just because of the way things have been going lately.
yeah, I would do 50%, and then a static fluctuation of like, assuming there's no increase or decrease in inflation, because right now inflation is increasing because it's below 50%. But like, yeah, the problem is the amount of stake makes it very hard to determine how much you'll get in the treasury. But like, then we just need to come up with a percentage, 1%, and then just map it out at a static 20% total. Yeah. I like math. I'll sit down and do some numbers. I'll see. I'll do some research into that. I might make a post on
I'll
it.
try
Maybe
it.
I'll add a post to it to the end of the forum posts.
Cool.
I don't think the participation rate really matters. I mean, it matters in terms of the inflation rate changing, but other than that, if you see a large unstake, that basically means that everybody, like the active participants, get more, but then the treasury would also get more, right? So it's just basically, I guess, the percentage. I mean, it matters if an orchestrator misses the rework call in that regard. But other than that, I think we can just take the inflation that is actually in the contract directly.
But if you take a static amount of inflation, say 1%, then it doesn't actually matter how many other orchestrators or how many other delegators yeah, it doesn't matter how many other orchestrators are staking, because you're just taking your 1% off the top, and then the rest of the 99% gets distributed amongst the orchestrators who are active. So like, participation rate actually wouldn't affect the treasury at all, other than fluctuating like percentage changes daily. But it wouldn't, I don't believe it would affect any increase or decrease, sudden increase or decreases of stake on the network, right? Am I correct about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the biggest issue I see is going to be the price, because most of the grants will be like placed in dollar terms, right? So
I didn't
if
even
we're
think about that.
planning with the current price and then we see a 50% increase or a 50% decrease, so that makes the model like really, really hard. And That was also like one of the reasons why I would be in favor of just like a lump sum mint at one point, because we know the price at that point. Maybe it would be best to switch at least a part of that sum to a stablecoin for better planning. I mean, that's just like the biggest issue that I see, that we can't really predict the price of LPT, and it changes. It matters a lot, right?
I mean, that's the one that makes the biggest difference. Like when I look at what I earn daily, I mean, the participation rate, inflation rate make almost no difference when compared to what the LPT price is.
I would say the
So I'm
lump
agreeing
sum
with
idea is
Travis.
actually a better idea too for a treasury, because if we have to start at 1%, say, in whatever, it might take 6 months or a year to even build up a sizable amount to do the first set of funding. Like, if we're going to have a treasury and we're going to launch it, probably on day one, we're going to be wanting to advertise it and actually spend the money in it. Whereas if we do this slow, I mean, as you know, running orchestrators, like day one is not your most profitable day, right? Like it takes a long time to build up. So maybe even a lump sum amount allotted, like 1% of inflation forwarded over the next year is dropped into the treasury in one shot, in one snapshot. We can then say, well, 50% of that will go into a stable, 50% of that will stay in LPT, and then now the treasury has a year to spend this budget. And then we can focus on budgeting rather than focus on revenue, which budgeting is already hard enough. And then next year, we run another, based on results, right? Based on demand, success, we can come back to this and say, hey, we want to do the same thing. We can, again, snapshot another, same amount, more amount, less amount, right? Just like a government does a budget. They get issued the money up front. They don't have to wait a year for it to compound into an account to arbitrarily try to spend, right?
Could you possibly, I don't know if you have time to like kind of put that into words on paper somewhere?
Okay, well, what time are we at? We're at 1. Okay, so ChatGPT is going to summarize what I just said between 37 minutes and 39 minutes past the hour. Perfect.
Sweet.
I could probably write that up in a much better way, but yes. First, percentage.
So YouTube will transcribe it, and then ChatGPT will put that into words that make sense. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it'll get transcribed, and then ChatGPT will rewrite it in a much better, clearer way.
Right.
What a
Summarize
time
it.
to be
That's the word.
alive.
That's the word I was missing. Yeah.
So let's see how it does. I wonder if I can just tell it exactly the time prompt and not necessarily go copy paste what I just said myself. But I might. It'll probably get caught up in like some other nuance thing. I should probably just go copy paste. Just go find it. And
Copy paste will be. I'd probably end up if it can figure it out. It's probably still easier to copy paste it than to figure out how to actually get it to do it automatically.
I'll spend more time saying, okay, from 1 minute.
Yes.
From 1 hour 37 minutes to 1 hour 39 minutes. Can you? It's like I could probably just go scroll, like literally just scroll down and copy paste.
That's from my experience, yeah. And ChatGPT isn't really good with stuff that isn't in the past. So so you'll run into issues with that too. It'll be like, no, I can't. I don't know anything past 2021. I can't read the transcript from that video.
Yeah. So revenue in inflation share. So I'm just going to do lump sum versus inflation share. A quick little blog post or reply about that. because I really do think that a lump sum amount just and because it's LPT, it makes it very clean. And if the Treasury is a failure, like it's very easy to reverse. You just don't do another lump sum in the future. But if you build into the protocol an inflationary Treasury tax, if the Treasury loses its keys, gets hacked, if there's changes, like we have to do protocol changes again to reverse or fix things, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna write down these thoughts too, real quick. Or change. Cool. Yeah, I'll come back to this later. But anyway, yeah. So those are my thoughts. Just like an inflationary hit on LPT that a majority of people would have to vote on. I mean, this sounds like an Arbitrum thing. Sounds like what Arbitrum did. But hopefully we can build some more confidence in our plan rather than theirs.
Yeah, I think
Well, at
docs.
least wait to do it until it's voted on, rather than just do it and then have a vote and then go the opposite way.
Shots fired.
Maybe order of operation matters. I don't know.
Right.
Doc's response to that idea when I posted on the forum was basically that yeah, many people don't seem to like the idea of just minting some tokens and some stuff with the max supply. But my point of view is that for Livepeer, LPT doesn't really matter since it's an inflationary token with no hard cap anyway. I see his point if you're talking about a token with a clearly defined hard cap. In Livepeer's point, we're minting like 7,000 LPT each round. So that's like at current prices, I don't know, $35,000. So if we would just mint like 3 rounds, basically, that's like nothing in the grand scheme of things. So, and that puts the Treasury at a healthy level already.
You know what's funny is people will probably look at the inflation and go, well, that's just normal. But then if you went to inflate the token by $100,000, they'd go, well, I don't want this inflationary event to happen, right? So yeah, the way the people would see it, I believe, is more negative than what they realize. So that's something interesting to cover when it comes to the perception of the idea. But
well, we can always put it up to vote, and if people don't agree with it, they can vote against it.
yeah, so I'll make a blog post about lump sum versus inflation share, treasury funding. There we go. Lump sum versus inflation share treasury funding. And I'll do some pros and cons of each and write out what each one might look like. And then maybe we can add some of those graphs. And then, yeah, kind of just like get some feedback on what people want.
Should we be trying to get a model going with the information we have right now so we can respond to Doug, or should we just wait for more information of how this is actually going to work?
When he's asking for a budget, is he asking for like a budget of what the Treasury would be spending? Like,
Yeah, he's saying assume that I don't know. Assume that a certain amount is leaving the Treasury. Yeah, we don't. That's not something
full guess on our part. Like, I don't like. Do we have any idea like what the grants currently have been spending? Or I guess we do. That stuff's all
it's all public.
documented.
This is the fun thing about budgeting, right? You create a budget and you put it out for a vote. and you figure out, like, the only thing about budgets is usually already a set percentage, but, like, you know.
I mean, I would even take that part out of the model. If you put a percent in and then, do the model that way without the budget factored in, then you get a sense of how much you're allowed to spend. And that becomes your budget after the model is generated. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would just
Kind of
work
go
out
hand in hand,
what
though, don't they?
work out what we want and then go backwards from there, right? I always believe in justifying what you want first. So, like, you would say, what are the types of teams that Livepeer want to encourage to build on? Okay, well, you're gonna probably want teams of 5, where and are we, okay? Well, these are the questions. Are we looking for teams of 1 and 2? Are we looking for teams of 5? Are we looking for teams of 25? Right? What is the scope of our typical grant, right? And then of these teams of 2, 5, or 25, what is the average wage of each person in this group? And you could say, well, okay, let's start with 5. You have 5 people, and the grant goes for, typically to launch something in this amount of time would take about 3 months. So you'd say, okay, well, each person deserves $20,000 for 3 months of their time times 5. So there's $100,000 in cost for a particular grant. Okay, well, you're gonna do this once a quarter. So then you would say, okay, well, we need $400,000 to cover this type of scope of who we're looking to fund, right? So I'd work from that way, and then, justify the cost first based on what you want to see happen, rather than arbitrarily pick a number like 1% and then find projects or people that fit into this constraint that might sound good, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like my brain power has been exceeded. Someone smarter than me needs to respond to that. There you have it, Titan.
Yeah, no, it's so much to take in, and there's so many just unknowns, at least for me, that it's really tough to 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 be able to come up with a budget without really doing some more research on it. I think going back in time and looking at what has been spent is at least somewhere to start. But I also, you make a good point, Titan, of trying to figure out what are we trying to accomplish and what would it take? What do we think it would take to to accomplish those goals? Finding from a dollar point or a LPT value. So I think it's a mix of things, but
I mean, it's so hard to say. Like, could be $2,000 for a small project, or someone might want to build a massive demand side application and request like 40K. Who knows?
Yeah, there's the grants tracker, and at the least I know that one shows, it's just a spreadsheet. It might give us a quick dollar amount for the past year or so.
Yeah, I think that's at least somewhere to start.
I feel like this will be a very different system to the grants model because of the continuous funding and how big the Treasury could potentially get. And I guess that's what would help us, the model would help us figure out how big that is actually going to look. I really think we want to fund demand side applications, right? And if there's $1 million sitting in the Treasury, that's a lot of funds for applications to be built. So
yeah, like I said, the one problem about the grants node is that it kind of just funds whatever comes at it, and it has many different criteria. Whereas I think the Treasury, we should make it, first of all, I think it should be just a lot more professional in the way it interacts with people. So something using a professional tool like Idea Scale or whatever out there, where there's a clear path to success and a clear path to funding and clear timelines and just some more proper constraints around how it's run. I think most people would appreciate that. But then also we can therefore really increase the funding for it. And like Ben said, $1 million equivalent. Then you could say, well, we're looking for teams of this size to build this type of robust application that is going to produce this result, and we're willing to fund that in a much bigger way. And then you can really build out a nice budget reverse engineering that, right? I think it's very possible to do that.
Yeah, I like the idea of idea scale.
And we have lots of expertise in this community that understand, like, what, like if someone wanted to build a live streaming application, how long would that take, right? How many developers would you need, right? Like we have a lot of resources where we can pull upon for that type of information, and then from there, times the budget by 2 and increase the timeline by 3, and you might actually get a working product. But we could put out maybe a $250,000 grant and say, yeah, for $250,000 we want something that's gonna perform and push for it, right? Or am I talking about the wrong scale? Like, what kind of scale are we looking for? Are we trying to be like, it sounds like this treasury is supposed to be the Livepeer treasury, the kind of the big dog, right? Is that what we're going for, or are we going for just a more formal version of the current grant committee?
I mean, that's what it to me sounds like. They're trying to do something more along the lines of what Polygon announced recently too, which is large scale public good funding for like very real use cases that just make things a lot easier for even Web 2 platforms to be onboarded into the space. And I'm thinking bigger projects, not like, hey, I want to make a video or something,
Right. So okay, so like a tool, like Zuper was saying earlier, like a tooling kit for dealing with different whatever.
Yeah, or like Elite is working on with the producer, incorporating decentralized storage, a whole nother protocol, and linking that to Livepeer and making that seamless. And those kinds of projects are grand and could probably use a lot of funding to get them to work properly.
Right. Yeah. So
I mean, that's just my, I have no idea, and I don't think any of us really know what the plan is for the Treasury, but that's what I can guess.
I mean, yeah, well, we are the community. So what we should do is we should start with a mandate and a scope, and then reverse engineer how much money we want and put it out there for a vote. That's what I would do. And who sits on the DAO, who owns the keys, I'm not so certain. I mean, I would hope that it's, to be frank, a lot of people that come to these water cooler chats, I feel like they have a pretty good grasp on the community and are pretty aligned with what a treasury should be going for. So
Doug had mentioned the grants committee being part of that DAO, and I had pushed back just a little bit, just since the grants committee, I mean, according to Doug, they're very involved in the back end, but they're not on a community level. They're not present, right? I would prefer it would be members from the orchestrator community who have been here and know what needs to be fixed and understand what the problems are at every angle, rather than the grants committee, who I just haven't seen be super active. But maybe being active isn't that important, and maybe they're doing a bunch of stuff in the back end I don't know about. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Titan, for sure.
Yeah, and there being two different tiers as well, I think is an important distinction. The grants committee itself could be its own DAO, essentially, I think. I remember in his proposal, yeah, one of them was, being like, how do I can't remember how it was explained, upfront funding versus like after the fact funding, where the DAOs would be kind of operating based off of after they've built something, presenting it to the Treasury for continuing funding versus the grants being more of a upfront funding mechanism
Upfront
that would be
versus
maybe on,
retroactive.
right, and that could maybe be used to initially fund a DAO. I would guess, through an on-chain vote or something in that tier 1 space. And once the DAO gets going, their tier 2 funding would be based off the results. If I'm understanding that correctly, and it might even be operating entirely within that DAO through a tool like Idea Scale.
Well,
but it's a lot of ideas. Yeah, lots of work on there. And I worked on an innovation program once for a large company. We used Idea Scale. So I'm familiar with the product, the way that they ran those committees and stuff.
Yeah, I submitted for a project in Idea Scale on Cardano back in the day. It was a great process. It seemed to really, my idea sucked and but people reviewed it and it was wow, out of 200 projects for the month, people actually commented. There was an incentive to comment and make adjustments, ask questions, really, it wasn't just this one way kind of street. It was very much community driven and there was lots of discussion. And I thought the way they came to conclusions on who should get funded were pretty accurate and well defined. And I just thought it was a really good process. And I was like, yeah, I think Livepeer would really benefit from this process of a very formal, very structured process where you know what to expect.
Yeah, and it does bubble the ideas up to the top once you start counting votes and stars and number of comments. There's a lot of data points you can look at to siphon ideas off the top.
I just had another idea. I think Livepeer got this Arbitrum grant, right? I think that's worth $400,000. So maybe we could take part of that grant and use it as a treasury starter. I think if Livepeer succeeds, it's gonna be good for the Arbitrum network as well, right? So I don't think there's anything bad in it, like taking part of the grant and selling it.
The one thing about that grant, I believe they were wanting to encourage delegation of voting power from our community. And so I don't think the purpose of it was to sell it, but I don't believe there's any strings attached. I think they just gave it to us. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely could be an option. Well then, wow, this has been a very eventful water cooler. I wasn't sure what to expect this week. It was my poor internet connection.
I know, there's
and
only a few people in here to start. I thought it was going to be like a 15-minute water cooler when we first started.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh, okay, well, this might be good. I don't have good internet, so but this ended up being very robust and interesting. So yeah, we've been at this for 2 hours now, so we'll probably call it there. But what I'll do is I guess first thing we need to figure out is our scope, and maybe some key things to success, and then how we want to fund it, and then and then go from there. So I'll write up something here, and then I'll get you guys' feedback on it. That'd be a good start. I mean, Doug has already written stuff, so I guess it's just more of me following up with him and what we talked about here today.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and call it there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the Water Cooler Chat, and do appreciate your time, effort, thought power, and persistence and perseverance being here during the bear market, and keep on building. So I do appreciate you, and we will see you all next week. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks,
Hi,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.